Welcome back to an extra special episode where I am not interviewing anyone, but rather I am being interviewed. That's a first for Hello, my name is Jenna. And the good news for you is that we are starting this in a place of annoyance because I am currently annoyed at my husband who's doing the interview because of how the interview was set up. Yet I am still excited to be here. As we've learned on this podcast, we can be many things.
There's not much setup that takes place in this. So what are we annoyed? The first question, what are we annoyed about with the setup?
You just weren't quick enough. And you didn't have your shit together enough. That's all. That's all.
I think I do.
Okay.
All right.
Well, could you tell my listeners what the focus of this is going to be?
Well, the focus is the writing process.
Okay.
You've recently finished another work that has been published amongst platforms that are online, so it's available to you online. So we might not get to that. Mm-hmm. I'd like to make mention of it, but I've got some more questions about kind of going back in time.
Okay.
To your first novel, Sheltered.
Okay, so you want this episode to be about... Because he didn't tell me the questions first, and I
Nope.
was okay with that, because I don't tell him. So just so my readers know what they're in, or my listeners know what they're in for, what is going to be the focus in general?
The focus in general is different from your normal format of this show. So It is simply about you and your writing and your process.
Okay.
And things that inspire you, things like that.
Okay.
So if I'm starting right from the get-go, which now I'm annoyed, what...
Does that explain things?
Yeah. So, question number one. Mm-hmm. What makes your debut novel, Sheltered, so important to you?
So important to me?
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard question. Okay, what makes it so important to me? All right, so what makes it important to me is what it communicates about relationships. So Sheltered is all about the best friend falling in love with, the unrequited love at first. And we've seen that a bunch of times in movies, right? Where one best friend loves the other one, but they don't see them the same way until the end when they open their eyes and realize they were all along, or realize the best friend was who they loved all along. And I've always thought those stories were full of shit because you don't just magically fall in love with someone just from shifting your perspective a little bit. And so Sheltered is all about the personal growth involved for love to actually happen, whether it's best friends, a marriage that already exists, or even people considering dating. Now, in the case of the story, it's best friends, but really anybody reading it could learn about love, and how love happens when two people are actually committed to, figuring their shit out. But there's a lot of drama in it too. So, it's also about coping with some of the things that life throws at you. So it's important to me because of what it communicates about relationships. I think that there's a lot that people can learn about themselves and about relationships, but it's a realistic fiction novel, right? So it's a story. It's not like a self-relationship help. It's a full-on story, but it's important to me because of what can be learned from it.
Mm-hmm. And your two main characters, Alex and Sarah, what were the inspirations for those characters?
Oof. Well, it wasn't any one thing. It was multiple things as I was writing it. But honestly, the inspiration for both characters is stuff in life that doesn't work. Mm-hmm. So the reason it's called Sheltered is because it's about all the ways that we sort of shelter ourselves from the things that have been hard in life, the ways that we run, the ways that we mask, the ways that we pretend that we're happy when we're not because we're too afraid to face vulnerable things or the unknown. And so the inspiration for Alex, for him in particular, the male character in the story, he's someone who's very much tied to duty. Well, I have to fulfill this obligation. He feels a guilt to fulfill an obligation because of his family. And it's not anything his family put on him. It's something he just sort of feels that he has to do. Mm-hmm. And, he has this dream of wanting to become a musician, but feels held back from that to responsibility. So the thing that doesn't work in his case is feeling like we're tied to our responsibilities and that we can't live our dreams because of that. And it doesn't work to kind of just pretend that you don't have dreams anymore. In the case of Sarah, she has a really hard time just finding somebody that can match her intellect and her dreams too. And so she experiences a lot of frustrations in the dating world with people who just can't match her. And the ways that she sort of self-destructs because of her frustration with those things. So the inspiration for Alex and Sarah is just what kind of doesn't work in life. And some of it is drawn from my own experience, both with my dreams and dating and love. And some of it is drawn from just cultural things that I've observed. So they're both examples of kind of what doesn't work, for life and relationship goals, but how we can make it work, what we can do to find the path we need to be on no matter what the circumstances are.
Okay. Nice. Now I'm gonna take you back in time to before you started writing Sheltered. Was there a moment that you knew that this was what you wanted to write? Or was it kind of like it just kind of started to slowly come to be something? Or was there a moment that you had, if you can remember, like, I would like to write this story about these two friends? Or did it just start to happen as you started writing?
So yes and no, I guess. Like many of my stories, they kind of unfold as I write them. I don't know how I want all of them to go, because they just kind of unfold as I write them. But yes, there was a moment where actually, like, I had a really bad dating experience where early on someone kind of ghosted me in a really shitty way. And I thought this was a relationship that maybe could go somewhere, but instead he was just kind of an ass and he ghosted me. And it was during a very vulnerable time of my life, and I was literally crying in the shower, not over this one guy, but just crying over my experience with love and just being so frustrated that real love didn't seem to exist. And so in that moment of just pain and frustration and crying in the shower, like, I literally got out of the shower and started writing Sheltered, because I knew a combination of things. I knew sort of that, like, I had been wronged by men, and I had. And it's not just about being wronged by men. Everybody's been wronged in the dating world, right? Especially in this era of online dating. I think even more so people are getting, and texting and things like that. I think people are getting more comfortable with blowing people off, being rude to them, compartmentalizing their lives, or thinking that they need to look for somebody who just checks the boxes in a relationship. And I wanted to write about how that's not right, how we need to wake up a little bit and stop ghosting people and stop checking boxes and look at ourselves, look at the kind of conversations that we have, take a look at love, and just to quote my husband, get real a little bit with how we approach relationships. So it was honestly a moment of crying and pain where I'm like, I got to write something that actually shows how to have an authentic relationship. How does love actually happen? And so it was kind of my own journey of discovering that. Like, how does love actually happen when we have so many messy parts of our lives that we're trying to deal with, and then kind of get other messes thrown on top of us?
Okay. So, that's a damn good answer. And it answers some of the other questions that I had, at least with Sheltered. So I'm gonna kind of shift a little bit though, and ask you, what was the hardest part of this writing process with Sheltered? Was it like the first draft, the revision, the editing, or was it something else? Was it something deeper? Was there the risk of putting your heart into something and it not being well received, or maybe it being received incredibly well? What was the hardest part of writing your first book?
Well, I have two answers to that. One is about the writing process itself. The second one is about kind of the reactions after I put it out there. So the hardest part about the writing process was just continuing to do it,
Okay.
I think, a lot of times people have this misconception that they need to wait for inspiration or they, only write when they feel like it. 80% of the time, and this is still true now, I don't feel like writing. I have to just do it. But I'm always glad that I did. Jay Shetty talks a lot about that I've heard him talk about that in his podcast episodes where he says, the things that are good for me, I often don't feel like doing, but I'm really glad I did them. And then he says, the things that are bad for me are really easy to do, but then I regret it later. Right. And that's so true. Like you could make it about something as small as like eating a cookie, like eating a big dessert that you're craving where it's like, oh, it's so easy to just go get that dessert and eat it. But then you regret it later if you're trying to, limit your calories or limit your sugar or whatever it is. It's like that with writing. And I don't feel like it. It's hard to get myself to do it. But once I do it, I'm glad that I did. So the hardest part with Sheltered was just building those habits of continuously writing even when I didn't feel like it. The hardest part after, because it's a realistic fiction novel and some of the events are tied directly to my real life events, I didn't like it when people would assume they knew what was based on my real life. And tell me, like people who knew me who read it, I didn't like when they would tell me, oh, I know what you meant by this part, or when they would say, oh, are you this character or that character? I didn't like that because I felt like when people did that, like if I wanted to write a book just about me, I would have written an autobiography or a memoir.
Yeah, your story.
And I didn't want to do that. I was trying to make a point about relationships in general. So although, some of it was based on my real experience, I didn't want people to read it so that they could pick apart which parts were about me or which parts drew on that, because then you're missing the point of the story. The point of the story is the story and the message that's being sent through the characters. And so I guess one of the hardest things about when it was out there is just when people knew me, I didn't like when they would just try to pick apart.
Just immediately compare it to just you and your experience. So how did you decide what details to include and what to leave out when you were building the world of Shelter, building the characters? You talk about how some of it's related to some of your experiences and that people sometimes assume, that this is just your story, your life, your thing that you're writing. But how did you, throughout the process of writing Sheltered, decide to leave out certain details?
That's kind of a tough question to answer because it's like... I can keep that answer brief. It's one of those things where you just kind of know as you're writing a story, you just follow your intuition and kind of feel when you're going off on a tangent. Sort of similar to when you're talking. It's like, okay, I know I don't really need this to make my point. And that's maybe where teaching helped me out a little bit. You kind of learn as a teacher when you're including too much information to the point where it's confusing people. So he kind of just cut it out. So my biggest struggle with writing is sometimes being repetitive because I have deep reflections for myself. And so sometimes all of my personal reflections, it's like they can appear similar, but there's one little detail that's different this time. And I noticed sometimes as I was writing Sheltered, when my characters were reflecting on something, sometimes it would get repetitive. So I would just look for trends where something was seeming repetitive.
No, that makes sense. And what I liked about Sheltered was the deeper reflections of the characters. And we've talked about this before, but maybe the listeners don't know. But Sheltered is a book about how the characters are feeling and how they're expressing those feelings and how they contrast to what they're feeling inside too. Sometimes they contradict each other. And that's what makes the characters kind of very relatable because they might feel a certain way, but they're not speaking it. They're not speaking their truth yet. And both characters throughout the entire journey well, they grow into these functioning adults, who look at relationships a lot differently at the end, and who can appreciate themselves too, learn from their mistakes, learn from the steps that they didn't take, and then start taking them. And I can't talk about too much, without spoiling it, especially certain specific scenes. So that book's published. That book's out there. It's being sold. You can pick it up everywhere, from Amazon to Barnes and Noble. But then within the next year, you had your first novella, Monsters. Mm-hmm. Monsters is just the ass opposite of Sheltered. It's not your conventional book. It's more or less like a psychological thriller with realistic, fiction tendencies, but also mystical fiction as well. Mm-hmm. So there was a transition from conventional storytelling to all of a sudden this roller coaster of a ride that deals with domestic abuse, and the monsters within, the emotional monsters that we deal with within. How the hell did you do that?
You're always so good at talking about my stories. I did it by, it was actually, I haven't had very many panic attacks in my life, maybe only a small handful. Mm-hmm. And
lucky.
I had one, and I didn't really know it was one until you kind of pointed it out. And when I was coming out of the panic state, I was really frustrated and angry at the person, the trigger for the panic attack. And then I found myself feeling angry at myself for panicking because of the loss of control I felt while I was having the panic attack. And in that moment, I was like, no, I'm done feeling guilty about these intense reactions that I'm having, because there's a reason that my body is having these reactions. Mm-hmm. So I went down sort of, one of the big lines in Monsters is, if I'm afraid, then there's something to fear. Mm-hmm. So then I went down the rabbit hole of just how the human mind works, because something I've learned through my writing in general is that the human mind is absolutely fascinating, and there's so many corners and crevices to all of our brains that we have not explored. And so Monsters was all about understanding, like, for me, the root of these panic attacks, and it was rooted in my experience with domestic abuse when I was younger. And then I got to know some of my own gifts, sort of like as a psychic and just as me, to recognize monsters. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like Monsters is sort of, I just let myself go down the rabbit hole and let my mind flow to create these characters that resembled the monsters that we deal with when we're dealing with mental health issues, like recovering from domestic abuse, or we're still in domestic abuse and trying to find our own voice and power again. So where the hell did it come from? It came from just kind of finally listening to myself and allowing parts of my brain, both the traumatized parts and the creative parts, to sort of hold hands and walk down the story together.
Yeah. Well, and I can't answer this question for you, but do you believe that writing Monsters opened up an entire different realm of writing styles for you, though?
Yes.
Okay. Can you expand on that more? And let me just back up a few things. After Monsters was created, quite literally within about a month or two, let's call it 2 months, is when you just kind of sat down, hunkered down, and did this. I noticed that your writing genres opened up, but also your poetry started to just kind of pour out as well, but then all of a sudden it felt like you were more open to writing different things, or at least having kind of a whole portfolio of different genres. Can you talk on that more about how or what happened with Monsters that just kind of triggered that, you know what, there's all these other things I want to write too? Mm-hmm. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I would love to expand on that. So You've been telling me for a long time that I should write fantasy, and I kind of just didn't believe you, but I think you planted a seed. And I guess the answer to that question relates well to a lot of stuff I talk about on this podcast, in that, like, some of our really shitty experiences, shitty moments, even things people do to us, the abusive or rude or cruel things that people do to us, when we're willing to take hold of those things and our reactions to those things, we can make magic and creativity, gold, that gold out of straw.
Yep.
We can make gold out of those empty things. And my intention when I started writing monsters was to empower victims of domestic abuse, but just empower people who've ever felt bullied in general, whether that's bullied in the workplace or with other adults, or just because of their gender or race or sexuality or whatever it might be. I wanted to empower those people. And so where I kind of opened myself up to writing in other genres was kind of a need. I had these cruel things that were done to me in the past and in the present, and I had these reactions to them, and I needed to make something of it. I needed to take hold of it and create, rather than just feel like a victim. And naturally, the story became kind of magical, because I firmly believe that magic is necessary for healing, discovering the magical and spiritual parts of ourselves that we didn't necessarily know were there. And so naturally, and a lot of, like, you look into EMDR therapy, that has a lot to do with the imagination. You look into meditation, that has to do with, the imagination, the magical. And so naturally the story kind of became magical realism. I once heard, again, I think this was somebody Jay Shetty interviewed, this woman talking about her confidence, and he was asking her, well, how are you so confident? How did you build confidence? And she's like, well, I built it kind of as I was just doing things. I would accomplish this task, and then I would realize I could do it, and then I built even more confidence. And that's exactly what happened. It started with Sheltered. I published a novel. I wrote realistic fiction. I had a need to write monsters. Oh, now I've learned, because I just did it. I just let myself go down the rabbit hole. Now I know I can write magical realism. Okay, well, from there, it's like, that was like dabbling in the magical. And then it kind of just happened from there, right? Where it's like the fantasy, sci-fi, like there's always a little bit of magic in that. So it's kind of one of those things where you just keep climbing higher on the ladder. You see you can do one thing, and then it's like, okay, well, now I can do the next thing. Where else can I go? Where else can I let my mind take me? And what is the passion behind it? Okay.
And then with Monsters, you then wrote and published She Has Reflection, kind of the sequel, and that was kind of your first sequel. But in between that, though, you started writing short stories. And now all of these works you can find at lovingcreatively.com. There's plenty of tabs, poetry, and then links to these books that we're talking about. But you kind of finalized but kept open the Monsters series with She Has Reflection. And I don't want to dive too deep into that, because it's not that it's like it is the same genre as the mystical fiction and magical realism kind of thing. But then you kind of shifted a little bit your career with short stories, and you started with we were watching a highly recommended movie by me, Chronicle.
Yeah, good old Chronicle.
It's a good movie, but it has its problems.
Like sexism?
Okay, yep. So there's sexism. I'm not promoting that. Thanks. But we watched Chronicle, and you're like, I could make a better superhero movie. So you started with Fury. And there's now 3 volumes of Fury. Now, Fury seems personal. From the first time I read it, it seems very personal on your spiritual journey as well. So how did you incorporate your spiritual journey into creating a superhero?
Okay. There's so many ways I can answer that.
It's meant to be hard.
And I've shared this with my listeners before because I think some of the best ways to get inspired and to make things are to pay attention to the things that piss you off. Like superheroes,
Yep.
young male superheroes who use their powers to blow women's skirts up.
Yep.
That was something that bothered me.
Yes.
And the roles of the young women in the movie Chronicle bothered me because they were side characters or love interests or whatever.
Yeah, there wasn't much focus.
So where the personal part comes in is it's like, I know the truth about women. That we're more than our skirts being blown up.
Right.
That we are just as worthy of being heroes as men. And so I wanted to think about all the things that make women heroic, but also all the things in real life, I guess, that I've struggled with a little bit, whether that's judgment or feeling outcasted, some of the self-destructive choices that I made, what I want the world to look like, what I hope the world will look like, who I believe the real life villains are, and what I think actually needs to happen for peace and love to really be the norm. And I kind of took all those philosophies and threw them into a magical story about a superhero who has firepower.
Yeah.
I've also really, one thing too, I've always loved elemental powers. I'm very passionate about nature, and I think there's a lot of magic in the natural world too. And so I wanted to incorporate that into the superhero part because I think most of life's power and magic lies in nature. So I wanted to make sure that that would be a central focus.
Okay. And Fury is, they're short stories. There's 3 volumes. You're currently working on the 4th.
Yes.
They are comic book style narrations and conversations. So check that out. If you had to pick your favorite out of the Fury series right now, if you had to pick one, what one feels closest to you?
They all feel close to me for different reasons, but
sure.
I thought you were going to ask me what my favorite is. Can I answer that instead?
Sure.
Because they're all close to me. I guess to actually answer it, they're all close to me because they represent, again, different versions of what I think makes life magical, what I hope to see the world become, the kind of hero I think we should look up to. They're all close to me because of that, because Fury is absolutely the kind of hero that we should look up to. Same thing with her companion, Maya. Maya comes in volume 2. Maya is the kind of hero that I think we should look up to. So they're close to me because I think they are the types of heroes we should admire. And I don't have any problems with them, except for this. I feel like in most hero stories, it's like, oh, this would work if they didn't, And when I say it's not pickiness about the hero itself, it's more just the pickiness and how heroes are represented. And again, I mean just related to sexism and all that kind of stuff. But my favorite one right now actually is volume 3, Wind, because that combines everything. It combines Fury's world, and it combines elements of Greek mythology and old legends, as well as angels and things like that. So it was super fun to write because the villain in that one is not what you would expect. And I got to add a twist, and I got to pull in elements from other sort of lore and myths and legends, and I got to sort of flip it on its head. And I love the villain in that one. In volume 3, that's my favorite villain I've ever written. And so they're all close to me, but that one's my favorite right now just because it was the most fun to write because of everything I had to sort of combine to create it.
I would agree. Fury volume 3 is my favorite of the series. And that kind of, it does kind of lead me into the next question then.
But that's a good thing though, right? Because any good series, it just keeps getting better.
It does keep getting better too. And your fight scenes that you've created, awesome. Love it. And I know that you were personally a little bit worried about writing a fight scene, and then you crushed it.
Oh, thank you.
So with Fury, was there an author or a book that was ever inspiration to you for combining mythology and fantasy fiction, sci-fi kind of thing? Mm-hmm. Was there an author or even a book out there that was kind of inspiration for some of the things that are in Fury? Because Fury itself is kind of a, like I said, it's an intense spiritual journey that I can understand that you took some elements from Monsters, right? But then there's some conventional character building that you brought in from Sheltered, Mm-hmm. But then you mix it in with some comic book, comic book-esque situations, right? Where the hero fights a villain kind of thing, but there's more to it too, because he brought in some emotion and character building there too. So was there, or is there, an author out there that you look up to that is doing the same things that you are, or maybe that even just inspired you to try your hand at combining some different genres and storytelling things?
I like that question. There isn't one answer. There's a handful of answers.
It's part of the reason why I asked it, yeah.
So there's not one author. There's different authors and different experiences. So as you know from being married to me, I read a lot of different things. And I have a lot of different interests. And so all of my stories are combinations of those interests. For Fury in particular, there's a handful of things, and I'm going to talk about all 3 volumes kind of combined.
Yep, yeah, because they're one. Yeah.
So in terms of an author, Madeline Miller, and my listeners have heard me talk about her before because she does such a fantastic job of taking a story concept, in her case, Greek mythology, right? Mm-hmm. It's been around forever. There's countless stories of Greek mythology. Yep. She does an excellent job of taking it and deconstructing it to write the story in a more equalizing, thought-provoking manner. And her story, Circe, changed my life because she was one of the first authors I had read. There could be more out there, but I don't know who they are. Mm-hmm. That actually wrote Greek mythology in a way that wasn't sexist, but also just wrote it in really good storytelling, and causes you to question why we idolize gods in general, right? Like the gods of Greek mythology, Zeus, Aphrodite, whatever, they're in so much lore. There's so much even pop culture tied to them. Fucking Percy Jackson became a thing, you know what I mean? Because they're so popular. Well, she calls into question in that story, like, why these gods are even gods, and then made me think differently about what made a mythical god and why. But the story and the magic and all that stuff that we love about Greek mythology is all there. So she really inspired me to take concepts, right? In my case, superhero stories or even elemental magic, and kind of deconstruct it and make it my own. And so on the note of elemental magic, I love Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra. Yeah. I love the concept of bending fire, wielding fire, water, earth, all these things. I love the idea of human beings being able to work and manipulate the elements. And that's probably part of my love for nature, is I love when, like, nature's a part of that power. So Avatar: The Last Airbender influenced some of the, like, my hero has fire power and things like that, because I love elemental magic. And in terms of mostly in volume 3, when I got to know my friend Varla, who I've interviewed on this show, I was really fascinated by her writing, because she's kind of a curator of stories. She pulls lore and facts from different odd, bizarre things and puts them in a collection and kind of takes you on a journey. And so part of the inspiration for Fury Volume 3 in particular came from reading Varla Ventura's Among the Mermaids book and some of the lore that I had studied in that, as well as just some of what I learned in some of her books of the bizarre and things like that. I'm also incredibly inspired by teachings that I've learned from local Ojibwe educators about just the connection that the indigenous people, in particular of Minnesota, had to the earth. And so Fury is an indigenous woman, but from South America, not North America. And so I incorporated some of just what I've learned from local indigenous teachings into her as well. And just by that, I mean the connection to nature, the honoring nature, and even in the character of Maya.
Yeah.
And actually, Maya shares similar roots to what I have, which is Cree, Native ancestry, along with French Canadian ancestry. So part of it is actually combining what I know from like my own heritage. So, and the people, the Cree people. So, there's also just inspiration of kind of wanting some justice for Indigenous folks. So my superheroes are also Indigenous heroes, both of them, because I believe that Indigenous stories should be honored and idolized as well. So lots of stories, combination of stories have inspired me.
Well, you have an entire library. We have very little time left here. Trying to keep this to less than 40 minutes here.
Ooh.
But I just want to name them, and just give a brief, and you just jump in.
Okay.
But then after Fury, all of a sudden you're looking at Game of Thrones and you're wanting to improve on that and change some storylines, and that's when you kind of dove into, and I hate saying fan fiction because I understand that you're a fan of these characters and these movies, these shows, these books, what have you. But you took the character Daenerys.
Well, wait. Why do you hate saying fan fiction?
It sounds so nerdy. It sounds so nerdy, like that. Like it is something negative. Like, oh, a fan fiction. Oh, you didn't like the way something was written, so you no. And that's not what it was. It was actually a deep love for the character Daenerys. And then you took that character and said, the ending that you gave him, I didn't like. Let's do something different, but let's show you some respect that she deserved. So you wrote Daenerys. Check it out. And then you're like, no, I'm in the mood, and this is where it seems like sometimes our conversations inspire you to write something. I'm not saying like our
You're
conversations, but we'll talk about things. We'll watch something. We'll be like, oh, Jurassic Park, that's great. You know what? I'm going to write a Jurassic Park story. You did with The Hacker, a Jurassic Park story. Phenomenally funny. I know that there's a deeper message here, but I need everyone to check out The Hacker. But then most recently, Widow's Soul. Your first official dive into the Marvel Universe, and you took that on. That's just finished. That's just uploaded. That's just being published on all platforms here. Now,
social media platforms.
Social media platforms.
Not official publishers yet.
Not yet, but it's coming. Final question. What does it feel like when you finish a new project?
Well, did you want me to say anything about all the things you just listed? Because
you can if you'd like. Yeah. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, you laid out all these things.
Well, I wanted to lay them all out and then just ask the question, what does it feel like to have all these published works, and to be continuously, putting out new material on your website and your socials? What does it feel like when you get when a project is done and you've published it to Wattpad, you've published it to fanfiction, you've published it to Inkit,
Archive of Our Own.
They're
a great site, so I gotta give them a shout out.
We may need to list these sites where all these works are available to.
But you can see them on the website, lovingcreatively.com.
Yep. But what does it feel like when you get something done and it's completely done? You've got the artwork, you've got the editing. It's now just out into the world. What does it feel like? Or is it different for each one that you've written?
Well, it feels like I want people to read it.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that. Like, as soon as it's all out there, I'm like, okay, please read it because I know you'll like it. Well, I don't know everyone will like it. In fact, there will probably be people who don't. But it's like my stories all have a message. And part of the reason why I've gone into all these different worlds, Marvel, Jurassic Park, Game of Thrones, is because there were some really, really wonderful characters and story concepts that I felt like just needed more. And so it feels like I want people to read it because there's a powerful message behind everything I write.
Okay.
And I want people to get that message, and I want to give people hope, and I want to entertain people. you know? So there's that too, right? Like anybody who creates art in any form, whether it's, you know, a painting, a sculpture, a movie, a TV show, a book, a story, you want to entertain your audience. I want to give my audience that gift of entertainment. Like, here's something good for you to watch, read, think about, talk about. Because good stories, good entertainment create good conversation pieces. And if there's one thing both you, Tom, and my listeners know, it's that I love a good conversation. And so I want people to read it so they can think about it, so they can talk about it, so we can start giving our attention to the things that deserve our attention. And that is good stories and resilient heroes. You look like you have a thought.
I do.
Yeah.
And I lied. That's not the last question. We're a little bit over time. You talked about message in your writing. If you had to look at all the things that you've written, you know, Sheltered, Monsters, She Death, Reflection, all 3 published, and then you have your short stories that are on the website. Is there a collective message within all of your writings, all of your poetry, everything that you've written and shared with the world so far? Is there a collective message that you're trying to send?
Yes. The world is better when it's equal and we care about things.
Okay.
Honestly.
That was easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang it. I thought that was going to be a stumper.
Literally,
I legitimately thought.
It all comes down to treat everyone equally and care about things. Each other, the environment, who you are as a person, how you make people feel. That, and we're all a little magical, I guess. But no, the world is better when everyone's equal and we care about things. That's what all of them are about.
Well, goddamn. That was easy. I thought that was going to be difficult. But, all right, with that, we're a little bit over time. Any final words?
Well, thank you for interviewing me, Tom.
Yeah.
It was fun.
No, thanks.
Nice to switch things up a little bit.
It is. Hey, guys. Thanks for coming.